The secret of the purest joy. The joy that transcends all natural joys is attained and maintained by fixing the eye of the heart upon Jesus Christ and keeping it there, and off of oneself, being focused on and devoted to making not oneself, but God happy, and to glorifying Him. Taking pleasure in that is a pure, supreme joy, which endures the pain of trials and losses, and overcomes temptations. This joy is even higher than the anticipatory joy of inheriting eternity with God and being rewarded by Him for our labors. It is not a joy that comes from getting something from God to make oneself happy, but a joy that comes from giving all of oneself to God to delight Him. When the focus of my own Christian walk changed from getting things from God for my own benefit, such as comfort, encouragement, joy, spiritual strength, and help to do His will, to glorifying God and pleasing Him, He gave me this pure and perfect joy, which has nothing to do with me and all to do with Him. I still make requests of Him for my needs and for His help to live pleasing to Him and to keep a right perspective on things, His perspective, and a right attitude. But whatever I do in life is about Jesus Christ, not about me. When my focus shifts toward me, that joy in living entirely for the pleasure and glory of God is inhibited. I have to make a conscious choice to put my focus back where it should be, on God. When I do, that joy is restored. As the angels delight in serving and worshiping God day and night in heaven, and as the Son delights in doing the will of the Father, so I delight in doing the will of Jesus Christ, and of my Heavenly Father in Him. This is what I live for, and this is life to me indeed, and my joy above all natural joys. A selfless love for God that comes from God Himself, which He helps me to maintain. There is great freedom in having such a focus in life as a Christian, the freedom of surrender and self-sacrifice, of being utterly given to God for God's good pleasure and glory, not taking thought for the preservation of one's own will. Perhaps the reason why so many Christians are discouraged and dissatisfied in their walk with Jesus Christ is not really because they're not getting enough of something from God, but because they're not giving themselves to Him enough to be so satisfied spiritually. Perhaps, if they were more focused on giving than on receiving, not giving their money, but surrendering their own will and living each day to please God rather than themselves, and dying to themselves to do this, and to glorify Him, privately and before men, they would take greater delight in the Lord, and would receive the fulfillment they are seeking. Instead of being focused on what God can do for them and give them, perhaps they should focus on living in total submission to Him, as empty vessels for Jesus Christ to fill and to live His life through, and strive to make their own joy the same as His, doing the will of God and seeing Him glorified to the fullest degree in their ways and deeds. I don't doubt that many Christians genuinely desire to do the will of God and to glorify Him with their lives. The trouble is, they don't want to be inconvenienced in doing this. They want their own way to some degree, and they don't want to suffer anything. They are still focused on themselves. If they were focused on God, they wouldn't be concerned about such things. Their desire and joy would be in pleasing Him and glorifying Him, regardless of the cost to themselves. God would give them that joy, if the desire of their heart was to do those things. But far too many want to do the will of God and have their own desires too. And they actually want their own desires, comfort, pleasure, ease, more than they really want to live to do that well. They'd rather play than pray. They'd rather look cute than dress in a way that reflects God's holiness and what is beautiful to Him. They'd rather relax than work. They'd rather be liked and appreciated than despised. All of these attitudes are indicative of a heart that is truly more self-focused than God-focused, with human priorities rather than God's priorities. So long as this is the case, they'll likely pine away for spiritual fulfillment in their walk with Jesus, seeking motivation and joy, and unable to maintain it. They'll ask God to give them encouragement, motivation, and joy, but the truth of it is the motivation and joy they're seeking is the product of giving themselves up to God in a way they're not doing. I do not say that the reason to give oneself to God is to get joy from Him, but that joy will be the result of doing so. The freedom of submission and total devotion leads to the purest, highest, constant joy in the Lord a Christian can have. And self-love prevents and quenches it. The Christian who thinks of him or herself as a living sacrifice to God and lives that way will have the greatest contentment, satisfaction, and joy in Him.